All right, you intellectual fuckers, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be ripping apart the pretentious asshole that is academic music history. We've got a stack of Wikipedia articles on the subject, and let's just say I'm ready to get pissed off and expose some serious bullshit.
I'm sure we'll find plenty to unpack.
Damn right.
Let's not sugarcoat it.
No.
Music history can be a real wankfest at times.
So Wikipedia, that bastion of knowledge, they define music history as studying music from a historical perspective. Seems simple enough, right?
On the surface, sure, but the problem is that their definition of music is about as narrow as a nun's snatch.
Right.
They mostly focus on this Western art music crap, which is basically code for music made by dead white dudes for other dead white dudes to jerk off to.
Okay, so we're already seeing the elitism rearing its ugly head.
Yeah.
They're basically saying if it wasn't written down on sheet music by some powdered wig-wearing asshole 200 years ago, it's not real music. Fuck that noise.
Exactly. It's like they're completely ignoring centuries of musical traditions from around the world, all the amazing music that's passed down orally or improvised on the spot. They're so obsessed with this notation bullshit that they completely miss the point of what music is really about.
It's like they think that music should be frozen in time, perfectly preserved in some dusty old manuscript. No room for evolution, no room for experimentation, no room for anything that doesn't fit their narrow-ass definition of what's acceptable.
And don't even get me started on their boner for the so-called art music. Like, they're the fucking gatekeepers of taste, deciding what's highbrow and what's lowbrow. Who the hell are these academics to tell us what we should and shouldn't enjoy?
It's a load of crap. Music is about connecting with something deeper than yourself, not about conforming to some arbitrary set of rules dictated by a bunch of stuffy old farts in ivory towers.
You know, there's this concept called notational centricity that perfectly encapsulates this bullshit. It's this idea that if it wasn't written down, it's not real music.
Notational centricity. Sounds like some pretentious wanker came up with that term to make themselves feel smarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like saying that the only real literature is written in Shakespearean English. What about all the incredible stories and poems that are passed down through oral traditions? Are they just going to dismiss all of that because it doesn't fit their narrow-ass definition?
It's a complete disregard for the richness and diversity of human expression. And it's not just about oral traditions. Think about jazz, blues, rock and roll. So much of that music is based on improvisation, on that raw energy and spontaneity that you just can't capture on sheet music.
Damn right. But of course, these music history asshats wouldn't know a good groove if it bit them in the ass.
Right.
They're too busy dissecting the minutiae of some obscure 18th century symphony to even notice the music that's actually moving people today.
And you know what really grinds my gears? Their historical disdain for popular music. Anything that the masses actually enjoy listening to is automatically deemed vulgar and beneath them.
It's like they think listening to a catchy pop song is going to melt their brains. God forbid you mention something like hip-hop or electronic music. They'd probably have a fucking aneurysm.
This is where Richard Middleton, a scholar who actually has his head screwed on straight, comes in.
Okay.
He calls them out on this notational centricity bullshit and argues that this narrow focus completely misses the point of much of the world's music, especially anything outside the Western classical tradition.
Middleton, you're my new hero.
Yeah.
Someone finally said it. It's like these music historians are stuck in a time warp, completely oblivious to the fact that the world of music is vast and ever-evolving.
And to understand how we got to this fucked up state of affairs, we need to take a trip back in time to the dusty, cobweb-filled beginnings of music history scholarship.
Oh, this should be good.
Yeah.
Let's meet the crusty old farts who started this whole mess.
Well, one of the first guys to attempt a history of Western music was this dude named G.B. Martini back in the 18th century. He wrote a 3-volume history called Storia della Musica, which is Italian for, well, history of music.
Sounds about as exciting as watching paint dry.
Then you've got Martin Gerbert, another 18th century dude who was obsessed with sacred music.
Okay.
He wrote a 2-volume history called The Canto de Musica Sacra, followed by a 3-volume collection of writings on sacred music from the 3rd century onward.
Wait, hold up. These guys were writing about music from over 1,500 years ago.
Yeah.
How the hell did they even know what that music sounded like? Did they have some kind of time-traveling gramophone?
Not quite. A lot of early music history was based on speculation, interpretation, and sometimes just plain guesswork. They had limited access to actual musical sources, so they had to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions and biases.
So basically they were just making shit up as they went along. Shocker.
Not entirely. They did have some primary sources like manuscripts and treatises.
Okay.
But the methods for analyzing and interpreting these sources were still in their infancy. Plus, there was this huge emphasis on tracing lineages and establishing a canon of great composers. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, it was all centered around Western European dudes.
Ah, the good old boys club. Got to keep the power and prestige within their little circle, right?
Exactly. And this tradition continued well into the 19th and 20th centuries with scholars like Johannes Wolff, who made some important contributions to the study of medieval and Renaissance music.
Yeah.
But even then, the focus remained firmly on Western art music, with little attention paid to other musical traditions.
So let me guess, these guys were all jerking off to Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart.
Yep,
The holy trinity of Western classical music.
you got it.
Yeah.
And anyone who dared to suggest that other forms of music might be just as valid or important was dismissed as a Philistine. It's like they were wearing blinders, completely shutting out the incredible diversity and richness of the musical world around them.
This whole thing is starting to sound like a broken record. Western art music, notation, canonization, elitism. It's like a never-ending circle jerk of pretentiousness.
Huh.
But you know what? I'm ready to break that cycle. Let's talk about the people who dare to challenge this bullshit.
You mean the rebels, the outliers? The ones who dared to question the sacred cows of music history?
Exactly. Let's shine a light on the folks who actually had some balls and said, hey, maybe there's more to music than just dead white dudes.
Well, there's one group you gotta give props to, the feminist musicologists.
Oh, yeah.
These women were the original badasses of music history.
Right.
They were the ones who started calling out the blatant sexism and exclusion of women in the field. They were like, where the fuck are all the female composers? Why are their stories being silenced? Why is this whole field dominated by men?
Feminist musicologists. Sounds like a bunch of bra-burning, man-hating radicals. But hey, I'm all for shaking things up. Tell me more about these badass women.
Hold your horses there, buddy. These women weren't about hating men. They were about getting recognition for the countless female composers who got buried under this mountain of male bullshit.
Right.
These women were pioneers, digging up the hidden gems of musical history, giving voice to the silenced, and demanding a more inclusive and representative view of music.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. I never really thought about it before, but you're right. When was the last time you heard a symphony written by a woman? It's like they didn't even exist.
Exactly. Their contributions were ignored, their voices drowned out. But these feminist musicologists, they weren't having any of it. They challenged the traditional narratives, exposed the biases, and brought a whole new perspective to the field. They showed that music history isn't just about dusty old scores and dead white dudes. It's about people, about culture, about the social and political forces that shape how music is created and consumed.
So they weren't just complaining about the problem, they were actually doing something about it. That's pretty fucking badass.
You got it. They weren't just scholars. They were activists, revolutionaries, fighting for a more just and equitable representation of music history.
And what kind of impact did these feminist musicologists have on the field? Did they manage to shake things up a bit?
Oh, they definitely shook things up. They forced the old guard to confront their biases and recognize the contributions of women. They paved the way for a more diverse and inclusive approach to music scholarship.
So thanks to these badass women, things started to change for the better.
Well, progress is always a slow and messy process, especially in academia, but things are definitely moving in the right direction. There's more awareness now of the need for diversity and inclusivity, and more scholars are challenging the traditional Eurocentric and male-dominated narratives.
But let's be real, music history is still pretty fucked up, right? You still have all these academics obsessed with obscure composers and theoretical concepts that nobody outside the little circle gives a shit about.
You're not wrong. There's still a lot of wankery in the field, a lot of pointless intellectual masturbation. But there are also some genuinely brilliant scholars out there doing some fascinating work. It's all about separating the wheat from the chaff, you know?
Okay, so maybe there's a glimmer of hope for music history after all. But before we get too sentimental, let's have some fun with this. You mentioned academic wankery, and that got me thinking. Let's take a stroll through some of the most ridiculous and obscure research topics in music history. I'm sure we can find some real gems of academic bullshit.
Oh, I'm sure we can. I've seen some things in my time.
All right, let's start with this one. The semiotics of the castrato voice in 18th century opera. What the hell does that even mean?
Well, semiotics is basically the study of signs and symbols, and a castrato was a male singer who was castrated before puberty to preserve his high-pitched voice. So this research is looking at how that voice functioned as a symbol in opera.
So some academics spent years of their life analyzing the symbolic meaning of a bunch of dudes singing in high-pitched voices because their balls got chopped off. That's some next-level wankery right there.
I wouldn't necessarily call it wankery. There could be some interesting insights into gender roles and the cultural significance of the castrato voice, but yeah, it's definitely a niche topic.
Okay, fair enough. But this next one is even better. The influence of birdsong on the music of Olivier Messiaen. Seriously, someone got a PhD for that.
Well, Messiaen was a 20th century French composer who was obsessed with birdsong. He actually transcribed bird songs and incorporated them into his music, so it's not entirely outlandish to study that connection.
Okay, I get it. One person's wankery is another person's passion project. But I think we've had enough academic fun for one day.
Agreed. It's time to wrap this up.
So what did we learn today, folks? That music history, at least in its traditional form, can be a real clusterfuck of elitism and exclusion.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. But we've also learned that there are people fighting back against that bullshit, pushing for a more inclusive and representative view of music.
We've learned about the badass feminist musicologists who dared to challenge the status quo and unearth the hidden stories of women in music.
And we've seen that music is about so much more than just analyzing scores and memorizing dates. It's about feeling, connecting, and experiencing something that transcends words.
Damn right. So to all you music lovers out there, keep listening. Keep exploring, and don't let anyone tell you what's good music or bad music.
Yeah.
Trust your gut, follow your heart, and let the music take you wherever it wants to go. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Dig into those weird, obscure corners of music history. You never know what treasures you might find.
Exactly. Who knows, maybe you'll discover the next great academic wankfest topic. The erotic symbolism of the bagpipes in medieval Scottish art. Coming soon to a university library near you.
Oh, God help us all. But seriously, folks, keep an open mind, keep those ears peeled, and keep the music flowing. That's what it's all about.
Well said.
And that's a wrap for another episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, you magnificent bastards.
Keep it real. It's funny, isn't it?
What's that?
How we get so caught up in these labels and categories, you know?
Yeah.
Trying to define what's good music or bad music. Like, it's all just vibrations in the air when you get right down to it.
You're right. But I guess it's human nature, right? Trying to make sense of things.
Yeah.
To categorize and analyze.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that those categories often end up being so damn narrow and exclusionary.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to challenge those assumptions, to push back against those gatekeepers, and to celebrate the diversity and richness of the musical world.
You know, I think one of the biggest takeaways from all this is that music history, like any history, is always being rewritten. It's not some fixed objective truth. It's an ongoing conversation, a constant reinterpretation of the past.
That's a great point. And it means that we all have a role to play in shaping that conversation, expanding the canon, ensuring that all voices are heard.
So what can we do as listeners and music lovers to contribute to that process?
Well, for starters, we can be more curious. Don't just stick to the same old familiar stuff. Explore new genres, new artists, new cultures.
And get out of our comfort zones, you mean?
Exactly. Go see a live show by a band you've never heard of. Listen to a podcast about a genre you know nothing about. Read a book about a composer who's not a dead white dude.
Challenge our assumptions. Expand our horizons.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Dig into those weird, obscure corners of music history. You never know what treasures you might find.
Yeah. You might even discover the next great academic wankfest topic. The erotic symbolism of the triangle in avant-garde jazz. Coming soon to a university library near you.
Oh, God. Please no.
But on a serious note, I think the key is to approach music with an open mind and a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you what you should or shouldn't like.
Absolutely.
Trust your ears. Follow your heart. Let the music take you wherever it wants to go.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the gloriously messy world of music history.
It's been real.
Until next time, you magnificent bastards, keep those ears open, those minds expanded, and those musical boundaries pushed.
Keep it real, folks.